This definitely isn't how I normally review these videos, but I wanted to just give my first thoughts just while it's all in my brain. It's flooding out. I think this video is going to end up being out a week late just because spoilers and things like that. I don't think there's a way of being able to talk about this movie without spoilers. Let's talk about like the structure and the thoughts on the characters and things like that first, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty stuff. I need to find somewhere to actually stand, though I'm just kind of hovering around. Okay, so Deadpool 3 starts off with Deadpool Wade Wilson being in a very weird position, right? He has just tried to do something that is big and epic, and it didn't work out for him. For whatever reason that I'm trying to avoid spoilers, it's knocked him back, and he has lost Vanessa as a result of that. Despite everything that happened in Deadpool 1 and 2, things didn't work out. And he doesn't know how to come back from it. And in all honesty, he's kind of given up on the Deadpool mantle. I don't think he wants to continue being that person because he feels like he has failed. Now, for one reason or another, the TVA are trying to get Deadpool to do something that he isn't really sure about. It sounds kind of like a good idea at first, and then he's like, oh, actually, yeah, you guys you're not doing the right thing here. And I will say, it's a bit spoilery, the TVA that we see in Deadpool and Wolverine is the TVA after Loki. So everybody was kind of concerned, right? The color palette was different. They were acting in a way that didn't really match what happened at the end of Loki, and they make it work. They do it in a way which is like a little bit crafty, but it makes sense. It doesn't mess with the lore of the MCU or anything like that. It all ties in nicely. So if you're a stickler for that kind of stuff, don't worry about it. They did it right. Now, once again, in Deadpool's life, there is trouble with his universe, and it's his job to try and save it. In doing so, that means that he needs to try and find a Wolverine. And dude, this is so hard to get into without proper spoilers, but he needs to be able to find a Wolverine to save his universe. Just don't ask why, okay? And then we transition into the end of Logan and how that plays out. There's a couple of really cool cameos that happen around about this point in the movie. Some of the cameos are absolutely brilliant. I was laughing by myself in the cinema. It was a bit of a sad situation. The comedy hits in this movie for Marvel fans in a way that is like, it delivers everything that we want. We get all the little jabs, comic book nerds, people who are into not only just Marvel, but other cinematic universes and stuff like that. You get a couple of nods and things here as well. After finding Wolverine, the pair go through the rest of the story, and it plays out. I have some issues with the story itself, but honestly, from that point onwards, once Wolverine is in the picture, it's kind of just, it's a cameo fest, which isn't bad in any way. Like, I was gasping at some of the people that came up on screen, but it definitely felt like they put the cameos in front of the story. Cassandra Nova is a really fascinating character, and some of the visual effects that they did with her and some of her abilities really creeped me out. It was super cringy. It was similar to some of the stuff we saw in Multiverse of Madness, where it's just, it feels uncanny valley. Like, you're like, okay, well, she's doing that's really weird. Just stop. I don't like it. But yeah, Cassandra Nova as a character is great. I don't think she stands out as much as she possibly could have, but I feel like that's because of all the other cameos, because of the good characters and the bad. A lot of them are going to outshine this antagonist who's there for the ride, and you get why she's doing what she's doing and what she's all about, but it's hard to like just focus on her and what her ambitions are when you're kind of looking at every other thing on screen other than her. As we start to enter the third act of the movie, after we've kind of seen all the cameos, we've had a bunch of fun just exploring this weird void multiverse type thing that Deadpool and Wolverine is doing, then you're introduced, and this is a bit spoilery, but it was in the final trailer. Skip ahead like 5 seconds if you don't want to hear it. X-23, played by Daphne Keane, is in this movie. She has her own little team that they've kind of banded together, and this, like, again, it's cameos, I get it, but this group of individuals, it's so perfect, and I don't think we're ever going to see them again in the MCU, but just the select few that are in this group going into the third act of the film, really, I think it meant a lot to fans, and it wasn't just a teaser or an appetizer or, oh, look who we managed to bring into the movie. It genuinely felt like some of the best fan service we've had in an MCU movie. And going into the third act, where naturally there's this big battle where Deadpool and Wolverine are trying to escape the void, and they have to take on Cassandra Nova. The characters that fight alongside them really make this whole thing work. I'd say the final 20 minutes of the movie is really great. It's action-packed, it's fun. It's not endgame level, it's not like Infinity War, and there's this really cool scene where there are a couple of Deadpool variants, which again, it's been in the trailers, but you are not ready for how many variants there are. But I will say one thing, and it's not really spoilery because you don't see his character, but Matthew McConaughey makes a cameo in the scene with multiple Deadpools. Try and guess which one he is. If you haven't seen the movie, you're gonna go and see it tomorrow or a couple of days or whatever. Try to figure out when all the Deadpools start coming out, right? Tell me which one is Matthew McConaughey, because I had no idea. I found out afterwards and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay. That's pretty much as I can tell you the story without really getting into spoilers. But dude, just while I'm vomiting all of this information, I just want to say this movie was so great. There are some elements that leave a little bit of weird taste in my mouth, but it doesn't put me off the film at all. Some of those things are the story and the pacing, right? The pacing for the first act of the movie felt super weird, and it's because you start the movie with a flash forward, then you rewind, and then you see what happened, and then you go off and you do other thing. It felt like they jammed like 5-6 different story points into this first act, just so you could kind of understand what's going on. And I get it, like there has to be some kind of exposition, but I feel like it wasn't done very smoothly. Like it was like you were strapped in for a roller coaster ride and you were just, oh, we're here now, okay, we're over here, all right, cool. It made sense, but it was just very disjointing in parts. And then my other gripe is the story itself. I'm trying to be generous to this movie because it was such great fan service and I loved it from start to finish. There was nothing in this movie that put me off. It's like a 9 out of 10 if I were to give it a rating. But the story itself felt like it was belittled by all of the cameos. It felt like, okay, so we're doing Deadpool 3, Wolverine is going to be in it, and Wolverine, like Hugh Jackman's performance throughout this movie, by the way, is amazing. I know he's a brilliant actor, and we've seen it in Logan, and I don't think the deep and emotional side of things was really there in this movie at all, but Hugh Jackman has this one scene where he just delivers a super emotional performance, and he's angry, and he's pissed off, and he wants to try and fix things and make it work, and he just can't, and he takes some of that shit out on Deadpool. That was great. Those kind of performances are very few and far between in Deadpool and Wolverine, but when they're there, it hits, right? And I feel like Hugh Jackman he nails this performance in a way that is different to everything he's done in the past, but it works perfectly for this movie. But I think I got sidetracked. Going back to the story elements of this movie, it feels just kind of weird and everywhere, and like I said, you don't really fuss about Cassandra Nova. You know that Deadpool's probably going to make it out okay. It feels kind of like a Pokemon game, right? Where there's so many cool action bits here and there, and there's some new things being introduced and loads of cool stuff to look at, nods to the previous games. But in terms of story, like, is Pokemon the same level as a Legend of Zelda or a Last of Us game or something like that? No, but it's still a super fun journey to be on. Then the only other gripe I have, and it's just me coming from the standpoint of a major MCU fan who's seen every project that Marvel have made, is the fact that this is meant to be Deadpool's crossing into the MCU. Given everything we know about Fox being bought out by Marvel and stuff like that, we know that this is his transition. We don't see that transition at all. We see at the beginning of the movie, there were like nods to him being in the MCU, and there are some characters from the MCU he interacts with, but we don't see this big, okay, Fox is dying and he's suddenly in the Marvel universe and there's no portal that takes him into it or something like that. It's literally just a case of, at the beginning there are nods, and at the end he has the option whether he wants to be a part of that or not. And that's honestly all the involvement, really. The whole scene in the void with Cassandra Nova and stuff like that, things that we've seen, like the desert stuff in the trailer with Eliath and, you know, all that kind of stuff, that is the MCU, so it makes sense. But there just isn't a transition point from Deadpool going from this other franchise, this entity over here, into what we know as the MCU. There's no crossing here, really. Then finally, I gotta say the action in this movie, I think that's what everybody's going here for, outside of the cameos, obviously. They nail pretty much every action sequence imaginable. There are a bunch of fight sequences between Deadpool and Wolverine. Naturally, we've seen one of them in the trailer, and there's probably like 4 or 5 in in the movie just between these two characters. Every single one of those are great. They make sense. They are bloody. They are gory. They're messed up. Not like R-rated messed up, which I thought was kind of strange. Like there's no heads that come flying off, I think. There's a lot of stabbing and shooting and things like that, but nothing crazy. Then all of the other fight sequences that don't involve Deadpool Wolverine, they are so good. I think there's maybe 3 or 4 fights that, you know, it's a group of characters where there's some cameo guys coming into things, and those fight sequences are typically pretty damn cool. The CGI for the most part is absolutely brilliant throughout this movie. There's a couple of odd little things you're like, I don't know about that. But I would say like 98% of this movie is perfect in terms of CGI. And the final 2 fight sequences, man, I've got to say, they are some of the best that I have seen in the MCU. Outside of Endgame, because that final battle, I don't think it's ever going to be beaten, but I think it's like Infinity War level action. Miles better than Quantumania. Like we're not even in that league anymore. I would genuinely go out of my way to watch this movie again just to watch those last 2 fights. That's how much I love them. Now, at this point in the video, I normally wrap things up, but I'm going to do a tiny little spoiler segment to just talk about some of the characters. So if you don't want spoilers, feel free to jump out the video here. I won't be offended. Please tap subscribe. I'm trying hard with this channel. I'm trying to make things interesting, and it'd be really great to have you on board. So here is your spoiler warning. You have an opportunity to jump ship, and it's gone. Channing Tatum is in this movie, and this is one of the biggest cameos for me. There are 2 big standout, four big standouts. I think we've only ever had 1 live action version of Gambit, and it was kind of mid. Like we didn't really get him for long. He didn't really do anything, but the Channing Tatum sequences in this movie, in the final fight, he's got the staff, he's got the cards, he's doing all of his tricks, man. It's so freaking cool. And he's got the super weird accent. Nobody understands the thing that we're saying. I don't know if it was French, if it was Southern American, bro. I know the character from the animations. I don't know what Channing Tatum was doing, but his character was absolutely brilliant. Daphne Keane, I feel like it's nice to have her in this, but you kind of got lost in all the action. I don't think she really got much of a chance to shine. Chris Evans in this movie was so unexpected. I managed to avoid all of the spoilers and the leaks and things like that, and I saw this dude put his hood down, and I knew it was going to be the Human Torch, right? You're not going to bring back Captain America, not when Secret Wars is just around the corner. You're going to save it, right? If it's ever going to happen, it's going to be then. But the hood came down, and we had the flame on moment, and I was like, this feels right. This feels good. Okay, good choice. How they got Chris Evans to come back for this, I don't know. How much money did you pay him, Marvel? Seriously. And there are a bunch of other really cool cameos. Happy Hogan shows up for a minute. That's the guy at the beginning of the movie. Deadpool goes to Avengers Tower and has a conversation with him about joining the Avengers, which that was mind-blowing. I just wish we'd got like a little bit of a lead up. But one of the biggest ones for me, weirdly, was Hulk. He's only got like 3-4 seconds of screen time, but it's just one of them situations where you know that there's some legal stuff going on. This character cannot possibly be in this movie, and yet they make it happen. And I feel like that's Ryan Reynolds doing some magic stuff with his tongue, trying to sweet talk all of the different producers and stuff like that, trying to make sure that he just gets a couple of seconds in this movie. That part there was just so unexpected. And then I think it was that transitioned straight into the Henry Cavill Wolverine, and Deadpool takes jabs at DC. Dude, if you showed somebody this video right now and it was a theory for a movie, people would say you're fucking crazy, it's not gonna happen, right? They made it happen. They made all of this wild, wacky, crazy stuff possible. I could go on for hours about all the cameos and stuff like that. I think ultimately, if we just wrap things up here, Deadpool and Wolverine is an absolutely beautiful movie. It is a love letter to the Fox universe and all of the Marvel stuff that came before it. I am weirded out that we didn't really see many X-Men characters and stuff like that, but I think they're saving it for Secret Wars. But I think that yes, this movie is a fun, action-packed, standalone MCU introduction for Deadpool, and a wonderful way of reintroducing Wolverine, Hugh Jackman into that universe. But I think more than anything, for people who have been part of the Marvel journey for years prior to the MCU, people who watched all of the X-Men movies for better or for worse, you're familiar with Hugh Jackman's story and character, and you've been part of that stuff, man, it really does feel like a big thank you to all of those characters for building Marvel into what it is today. And it's crazy. It really was a crazy experience, and I think I'm gonna have to go and see it again, maybe 2 or 3 times before it leaves the cinema, because it's one of the most fun Marvel projects that we've had in a very long time. And for some of the people who sit there thinking that this movie is going to bring Marvel back, I don't know about that, because we've seen the trailer for Agatha all along. Doesn't look that great. We've got the Fantastic Four movie coming out soon. We've got a couple of other projects that I'm excited for, but I think that only time is going to be able to tell where we go with Marvel in the future. You got some dodgy projects happening, and we've got some good ones. Hopefully they kind of lean more towards that and they focus on quality and storytelling and don't go down the Star Wars route where it's just, we're going to give them a bunch of fan service and hope that that is enough for them. I feel like MCU fans have grown up over the last couple of years with this incredible cast of characters and storylines and things like that. It's been nearly 15 years that we've been a part of this. So anybody who's still really interested in it from the beginning, the likelihood is they're going to be late 20s, 30s, like myself. And I feel like the older you get, the more you appreciate actual story and depth and character development. So that's something I think Marvel needs to focus on. But this is definitely a step in the right direction, and I'm excited to see where it all goes in the near future. Alright, thank you so much for watching today's video. This is a bit of a longer one, but hopefully it gives you a decent review and impressions on Deadpool and Wolverine. If you haven't already seen it, make sure you get your tickets while it's still in cinema. It is an action-packed adventure that is worth every single penny you're going to spend on that admission. I love your faces, you're amazing, you're beautiful, and I will catch you in the next one.